for tonight is basically just a meet and greet. Each candidate will be introduced, have the opportunity to tell you why they are running, what their platform or positions are. Every candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and we are hoping very much that people will stay and ask questions of the candidates after. For the candidates tonight, we do have Amy Naples is in charge over here with her bright red sign. She will give everybody a 30-second warning. We're going to keep every candidate to 2 minutes. Stacy Jordan and I will be introducing the candidates, and we hope that everybody has a very enjoyable night. So thank you all for coming. Thank you. To start off this evening, we have Patricia St. Aubin, and she is here tonight representing the Republican candidate for U.S. Senate, Jeff Deal. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Great venue. I'm Patricia St. Aubin. I live in Norfolk, Massachusetts right now. I grew up in South Dartmouth. Just to let you know, my father was executive director of the New Bedford Chamber of Commerce for many years. So thank you, Chamber of Commerce, for running this event. Jeff Deal, Representative Jeff Deal. He doesn't live far from you. He represents Whitman. He's a Republican. He's against raising our taxes. He's proved that over and over again. I want you to consider, with the two U.S. candidates, how they have affected your lives. Jeff Deal was very successful with the repeal of the gas tax initiative 4 years ago in 2014. It was a ballot question. He was outspent 33-1. I worked on that particular ballot question. The problem with it was automatic gas tax. The state legislators would have allowed that gas tax to rise with inflation without taking a vote. Honestly, we need to take a vote if somebody's going to raise our taxes. Next year, 2015, Jeff got involved in the Olympic bid of 2024 in Boston. He was about ready to put up a ballot question on that. The infrastructure, the venues, all of that would have cost taxpayers. The only ones benefiting from that were a selected group in Boston, but yet the whole state would have been paying for that. As soon as the 2014 Olympic Committee heard that there was going to be a ballot question, greatest form of democracy those ballot questions are, because that allows us all to vote on how we see these initiatives. Nonetheless, as soon as that was going to be a ballot question, they pulled that 2024 bid for the Olympics. Jeff is a Eagle Scout. He's a father of two. He's a small business owner. He runs the Boss Performing Arts Center in Hanson with his wife, Kathy Jo. He understands the issues that small business owners face, which many of you in the Chamber of Commerce face on a daily basis. Jeff is a level-headed, calm, cool, and collected, wonderful friend, wonderful person. Please support Jeff Deal, Representative Jeff Deal for U.S. Senate. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy the evening.
Move this down a little bit. So our next speaker is Chartis Tibets. Yes on question 2.
Hi, I'm here as a citizen volunteer in the organization that collected the signatures to put this question on the ballot. The name of the organization is People Govern, Not Money. And question 2 gives the people of Massachusetts an opportunity to lead a national movement to take back control of our government. It goes far beyond politics. It is a step in a process to restore trust in government and true democracy to America. The question would, if passed, would establish a 15-member Citizens Commission of volunteers appointed by a cross-section of the state's political leaders to assist the legislature in drafting and proposing to Congress a 28th constitutional amendment to control the influence of money on politics and government, and to limit the rights of corporations, unions, and special interest groups called artificial entities in the full text of the question. The Citizens Commission will provide information about the influence of money in Massachusetts politics, recommend language for the amendment, press the legislature to act, and prepare Massachusetts to ratify the amendment after Congress sends it to the states. At the moment, 19 states and roughly 800 communities across the country, that some are Republican areas and others are Democrat in the way they typically vote, that these places have called for a constitutional amendment to control the influence of money on government and establish that corporations and unions should not enjoy all the same rights as individuals. Many think a constitutional amendment is unachievable, but several versions of a 28th Amendment to control the influence of money on politics have already been proposed in Congress. And voters and legislatures in 19 states, red and blue, as I said, have already officially supported the idea. Thank you very much for your time, and if you have questions or would like to have literature to read, I'd be happy to do that later.
Thank you. Our next candidate at tonight's forum is Tom Keyes, and he is the Republican candidate for the Governor's Council. Thank you for joining us.
Oops. Oh, can I adjust this? Or is this good? Does that work? Good evening, everybody. My name is Tom Keyes. I'm from the town of Sandwich, and I'm running for Governor's Council. Governor's Council is a very large district, and it's a race that nobody knows about. Governor's Council's main responsibilities is to appoint judges here in the Commonwealth. I live in the town of Sandwich. I am married to my lovely wife, Melissa. I got 2 young daughters. I've been in private practice since 1998. I apply management techniques to corporations and organizations. I am an ethics and compliance officer, which would make me very unique on Beacon Hill. And I was former 2-term selectman in the town of Sandwich, former on the county level for a couple of terms on the Assembly of Delegates, and president of the Selectmen and Council Association a couple of times. I've been very involved. And this seat came up and for consideration, and I decided to run for it. The district goes all the way from Rhode Island to Pembroke, all down to Provincetown and the islands. It's larger than a congressional district, and it's a race nobody knows anything about. So why do I write on top of here, stop bad judges? Well, I believe we can do a better job. I think we've all seen in the press that we've had some infractions across the Commonwealth where judges have let repeat offenders and career criminals back out into the public. And I'd like to see us appoint judges that are going to first look at the victims. Victims, is that 1 minute left? 30 seconds. We need to have judges that aren't going to legislate from the bench. We want to make sure that they're going to put as pure heart into their job and make sure that the individuals that are before them time and time again aren't getting back out, aren't creating more victims every time they have to go back to the jail or to the court system 10, 20, 30, 125 times. This happens more than people realize. We need judges that are going to first serve the public before they serve the people before them. Anyway, I would like to just ask you your vote come November, and I'll sleep then. Thanks, everybody.
Our next speaker is Mr. Randy Hunt, Republican incumbent for candidate for state representative.
I know the applause are muted when everybody's holding wine in one hand, so that's okay. I am Randy Hunt. I'm the representative from the 5th Barnstable District. So why am I in Plymouth? The reason is I have Precinct 9 in the town of Plymouth. And I love the fact that I have part of my constituency here in this county because I get 2 DAs, I get 2 sheriffs, I get 2 county commissions, I get an extra hospital. It's really interesting, and for real, it does help out a lot. I've been very much identified with working on this opiate overdose issue that we've had for a long time. When I first ran in 2010, it was on my push card. I hate the fact that it has gotten worse in the last few years because of the trafficking of fentanyl. But we are making progress, and we have done some things at the state level with a couple of bills that have turned us in the right direction. Fewer overdose deaths in 2017 than 2016. Half the prescription pills that were out there a couple of years ago. So we're making progress on that front. I am a CPA. I own a small business. I practice. I'm only one of 2 CPAs in the 200-person legislature. That is a piece of me that I can bring that is almost unique to this House of Representatives. I have also been signing the front side of payroll checks for the better part of 30 years. So I get it when you have to put your own paycheck in the drawer and wait for the cash flow to catch up to you. I am a business person. I have a family. My wife is right here in front of me. She's doing a recording and holding the camera the wrong way, but that's okay. And we have 6 kids and a dozen grandkids and 1 on the way, and our youngest is in the Air Force and deployed in Southeast Asia. So all of this work that we do really means a lot to me, and I ask for your vote on November 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. Our next candidate is Tim Cruz. He is the Republican incumbent for the Plymouth County D.A. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks. I want to thank the Chamber for putting this on. It's great to see everybody out here tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to say a couple of words. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tim Cruz, and for the last 17 years, I've had the privilege of being the district attorney here in the County of Plymouth, where I was born, where I was raised, where I raised my family. We live over in Marshfield, where I've been there for 22 years, and I love this county, and what's special about this county to me is how diverse it is. It's diverse from our urban section up in Brockton down to our rural areas down in Rochester, Marion, and Mattapoisett. And to me, it's always really exciting to go to the different portions of our county. But we all face, no matter what the zip code is, we all face the same issues. We all face opiate issues right now that need to be tackled with head on. We've been doing that here in Plymouth County for the last 3 years. Myself and Sheriff McDonald put together a drug abuse task force, from which that task force, bringing in people from the legislature, judiciary, faith-based, families, medical, educators, making sure we can get in front of this terrible problem, working together to make a difference. We're focusing on trying to help drug-endangered kids, the kids who, unfortunately, parents are passing away and from these drugs and from this insidious disease. We've just got a grant to make sure we can have trauma-sensitive schools all throughout Plymouth County and helping those kids so that they can go forward with their lives, so we can stop those cycles for those kids that have adverse childhood experiences, making sure we can help them. At the same time, we continue to get grants as pertains to guns and drugs and violence that happen in our urban community. We just got a grant from Project Safe Neighborhood, 1 out of 4 here in the country, that's dealing, thank you, that's dealing with all the issues that are going on up in the more urban part of our community. I'm running out of time because I can go on for a while, but I just appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I ask for your consideration on November 6th or earlier, whenever you have an opportunity to go vote. I appreciate the Chamber and everything they're doing. You guys all have a good day, and thank you so much.
Next up, we have Suzanne Bump, Democratic incumbent for State Auditor.
Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here as a former member of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce Board. I really appreciate what a chamber does, not just for the economic vitality of a region, but also for the way that it provides community. And so I thank you for your sponsoring of this forum this evening. By way of biography, I grew up in the town of Whitman. I live now in the town of Easton. I was a state representative for the town of Braintree, as I say, back in my youth in the 80s and 90s. I represented Braintree for 8 years. I was labor secretary for Deval Patrick before I left that position in order to run for the position of state auditor, because I want the auditor's office to be more heavily focused not just on identifying waste, fraud, and abuse in government, but also focusing on outcomes. Are we really getting what we're paying for from our agencies? So as you're thinking about the state auditor's office, I'll give you 3 reasons why I think that you should consider supporting my re-election. One is the numbers. Over the past 8 years, we've identified more than $1.3 billion in misspending, inefficiencies, and fraud.
That's money that comes out of your wallet. 1.3 billion is a substantial accomplishment for the Office of the State Auditor. But the audits that we do don't just have a financial impact, they also have a human impact. When we're bringing to an agency's attention that it's not doing all that it can do for our veterans or for children, that has a value that goes beyond dollars. The most important audit that I think that the office has done in this regard was our audit of the Department of Children and Families, which found that social workers were not using all of the information to which they had access in order that they could keep kids in state custody safe and healthy. We have received excellence in auditing awards, and we receive the highest possible rating from organizations that look at our objectivity, our independence, and how well we document our findings. I ask for your support as I run for re-election. Thank you.
Thank you. And ironically, our next speaker to join this forum tonight is Dan Fishman, and he is the Libertarian, am I pronouncing that right?
Rebels in the house.
Candidate for State Auditor. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Dan Fishman. I am the Libertarian candidate running for Auditor in the state of Massachusetts. And the question that I ask people all the time, if you heard the auditor say that one of the primary functions of the auditor's office is to make sure that government doesn't waste money, and it's okay to laugh at that, if you believe that's one of the functions, why would we elect a Republican or a Democrat to audit Republicans and Democrats? Fundamentally, the auditor's position is one that ought to be independent. I am running as a Libertarian. If you know anything about us, we stand for the idea of the smallest possible government that we can have, the most efficient government that we can have. That ought to be a prerequisite for somebody who is willing to serve as auditor. And I say willing to serve. I do not believe that we elect civic leaders because I don't believe that people need to be led. We are not sheep. We are supposed to be electing public servants. You should not have a career in the State House. The current auditor has been in office for 8 years. I think that is long enough for anybody. I have my pledge right here that I will only serve 2 terms if you elect me. And I say that because the auditor's been in office for 8 years, but the Democrats have held the auditor's office for 88 years, since 1931. Sarbanes-Oxley, which is a rule for auditing public corporations, requires a corporation to change their auditor every 5 years, because otherwise they find the auditor becomes complicit with the company that they are auditing. And we've seen lots of scandals this year. You don't have to look very hard to find scandal Massachusetts payroll. Google it, you'll find a bunch of examples of it. There are a lot of examples of us not even auditing payroll. As an example, we have a situation in the Steamship Authority, which most of you are familiar with. The Steamship Authority has not submitted their payroll. So, I'm asking for your vote because I want to go down to Beacon Hill, and I'm not going there to make friends. Okay, because the auditor shouldn't have friends on Beacon Hill. The auditor should actually be a thorn in the side of every agency. That person who comes around and demands fiscal responsibility. I'm not going to Beacon Hill to make friends. I'm going to Beacon Hill to find out where our money is. My name is Dan Fishman. My website is auditmassachusetts.com because I want to audit Massachusetts. I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And our next candidate is John Mahoney, Democratic candidate for State Representative, 1st Plymouth District.
Thank you, everyone, and Amy for sponsoring this forum. I just want to let you know that I'm an Eagle Scout and my opponent is not. Having said that, building off the couple of comments we heard from Ms. Bump and her opponent, a couple of years ago, we had a top-to-bottom review of economic development in the town of Plymouth. Barry Bluestone out of Northeastern conducted that review, and top to bottom, we got an A-. 2 critiques. You need infrastructure, water and roads. You talk about an auto excise tax. Okay, where's the roads tax do you pay? Does it go to roads? No, it doesn't go to roads. Took until 2017 for the Board of Selectmen in Plymouth, and I've been on the board for 4 terms. And I can't explain why it took until 2017, but we finally set up an account for roads, and we're investing in roads today without raising property taxes. We expanded the sewer line out 44. We did that without raising property taxes. The community built a facility in 2002 that opened up at only 50% capacity. We've increased that capacity by almost 300,000 gallons a day. We did that with a $4 million betterment that only impacted the individuals in the 201 lots out there that were getting the benefit of the new sewer pipe. And last but not least, the new town hall. We were given an option a few years ago of enacting a local meals tax. For me, it was this simple. That money's going to be buried into the abomination or the black hole of the general fund. I want nothing to do with it. We earmarked it for the new town hall. I keep telling Mr. Palfrey he's got to get there and get a tour. If you haven't been to the new Plymouth Town Hall, you don't know what you're missing. So roads, sewer expansion, investing in your downtown, none of that done with any of your property taxes. My name's John Mahoney. I'm asking for your vote on November 6th. I want to go up and compete and get more money to come back to this community so we can make further investments in your infrastructure, especially for a standalone event that's going to begin in about 18 months, which is the 400th anniversary of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. And speaking next will be Kathy Lenatra. She is the Democratic candidate for state rep in the 12th Plymouth District. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for the Chamber for holding this event and giving me the opportunity to introduce myself. My name is Kathy Lenatra. I'm running for state rep in the 12th Plymouth District. Currently, I'm the Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen in Kingston. I'm also a founding member of the Affordable Housing Trust in Kingston. I've been a small business owner. I've been on the Recreation Commission and the CPC. And I think that government needs to work for all of us, all the people and all the businesses that we have. As a small business owner, I had challenges. There were many times that I had to forego a paycheck to pay my employees. You know, small business is the cornerstone of our communities, and state government really needs to step up and make sure that we're successful. As the Vice Chair of the Board of Selectmen, I face the challenges that all the communities face. We need to fight for our fair share of local aid for our education, our infrastructure. We need to compete for those grants for our coastal communities, our seawalls, our infrastructure as well. So these are the things that I would like to work on in Beacon Hill. There's 3 top priorities that I have: sustainable economic development, infrastructure, education reform, and affordable housing. We are educated. We have the best schools in the country, and we're educating our young people, and they're moving out of state because they can't afford to live here. We want to attract the best employees we can for our businesses, but we do not have affordable houses for them to live at. These are things that I would like to work on. I have the experience, I have the passion, and I'm ready to do this job. So I ask for your support. Again, the 12th Plymouth District, which is all of Kingston, all of Plimpton, all of Halifax, parts of Plymouth here, parts of Middleborough, and parts of Duxbury. So if you do not live in that district, I ask for your support. And thank you for the opportunity to introduce myself, and go Sox.
Thank you. Kathy certainly knows how to get the vote, doesn't she? Speaking next will be a representative from Helen Brady's campaign who is running for Republican candidate for state auditor. And we have with us tonight Julia Fagnant. I'm probably pronounced that wrong, but...
Hello, thank you. My name is Julia Fagnant, and I'm here on behalf of Helen Brady, who is a longtime, very dear friend of mine. I've known Helen since we were 12 years old, and Helen was responsible for getting me involved in politics back in our very early 20s. Helen is a mother of 4 lovely, wonderful children. She works at the Boston Symphony Orchestra. She's been there for 30 years. Most recently, her job is in the Business and Development Office. I'm happy to speak on Helen's behalf. As a friend, her characteristics are that she is reliable, she's honest, she's steadfast in her commitments. She's been a good, true, dear friend to me. Full transparency, while she is running as a Republican, I'm an independent, and Helen has had a lot of respect for my thoughts and opinions over the years. There are things that we agree about, and there are things that we disagree about. I'm a clinical social worker, and I have a lot of years in service as a clinical social worker, both in the public and private sector. And so in my role as a clinical social worker, we've often talked about the kinds of programs that should serve people. And a lot of the programs are not held to accountability. They're not evidence-based. They're not held to outcomes. And these are the kind of programs in my role that I create so that there's data, so that we can see that these programs do what they're supposed to do. A society is judged by how we take care of our elderly, our sick, our mentally ill, people with drug abuse. But the programs have to be accountable. The programs have to do what they're supposed to do. And that's one thing that Helen is very committed to. She's feisty. She'll roll up her sleeves. She'll get in there and do what she needs to do in the role as auditor. So I hope that you will join me and consider voting for Helen. And as we all have said for many years, give them Helen.
Next up, we have Joseph Trishelli, Republican candidate for State Representative, 12th Plymouth District. Thank you.
So, good evening, and thank you all. Thank you to the Chamber for hosting this. It's an honor and a pleasure to come here tonight and speak to each of you and have the opportunity to talk about the campaign, as well as what we're all trying to accomplish is better government and make sure that we're working for you. A little bit about myself. I've been in the Air Force now 18 years. I've been overseas twice and just recently came back from rejuvenating my career and going and becoming a commissioned officer. During that time, I've also had the opportunity to work in state government as well as work for our community here in Plymouth as a town meeting representative. I've had the opportunity to work for our sheriff, where I worked on programs from substance abuse treatment to housing and employment, and then got picked up by the Baker administration, where I got to work with our veteran population. I was the legislative director for the Department of Veteran Services, where I built relationships on both sides of the aisle. I've built consensus. I've worked on issues that are tough issues that included working on housing and affordable housing for our veterans, working on economic development and tax incentives for hiring unemployed veterans, as well as working with the legislature to develop language that would help transition veterans from active duty and take those skills and leadership talents that they have and translate those into the workforce, so they're not starting at the bottom again. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of these different things. I look forward to being able to come back and represent the 6 communities that make up the 12th Plymouth District, to be able to represent you. You know, we talk about education. I have 3 young boys that are currently in the Plymouth school system. Education is a big part of why I'm here. I want to see our education system be better, continue to lead the nation. You know, I look to my wife, who's a school committee member here in Plymouth, and look at the good work that they do. And I want to be part of that solution up on Beacon Hill. So with that, thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration on November 6th, and I hope to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Joining us next will be Vinnie DiMacedo. Vinnie is the Republican incumbent for the Mass Senate for the Plymouth and Barnstable districts, and our guest. So thank you, Vinnie.
Thank you so much. Sharon, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the Chamber for putting this on, and to all the candidates who have stepped into the fray in the political process. I really do appreciate you being involved. 4 years ago, I made a commitment when I ran for office that if you gave me the chance to be the state senator from the Plymouth and Barnstable District, that I would be honest, that I would be hardworking, and I would be effective. And I really believe that I've done that over the years, and I also promised that I would work on issues that were important to the district. First and foremost was the issue of the opiate crisis. It was an issue that I, as a state representative for 16 years, I saw get more and more challenging, and I worked closely on that. And Randy Hunt, who was my colleague, he and I both had the privilege of serving on the conference committee that put forth that piece of legislation that, as he said, has made a significant difference in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. That one point that he made, I think, is worth repeating. Since 2013, because of this legislation, we have decreased Opiates that are prescribed, 51%. That's making a difference, and I'm really proud of that, and with all the other things we've done as well. I also said that I would work on addressing the issue of the decommissioning of the nuclear power plant. I, along with my colleague Dan Wolf, who is a Democrat from the Cape, put together the Nuclear Advisory Commission for the decommissioning of the nuclear plant. They have been working for the last 18 months and have put this region in a much better place than we otherwise would have been had that not happened. And they're actually meeting tonight with some results from that. Lastly, I promised this community that I would work hard to try to get the revenue necessary to build the infrastructure in this area for the 400th anniversary of this 400th anniversary of the founding of this great nation here in Plymouth. In that, over $16 million in state funding has come in the last 4 years, leveraging $14 million in federal funding for dredging, and I now have to end. But with that, I want to thank you so much, and I hope that you will give me the opportunity to continue to serve, and I ask for your vote. Thank you very much.
Next, we will be hearing from John Bradley, Democratic candidate for Plymouth County D.A.
Thank you. My name is John Bradley. I'm a Democratic candidate for Plymouth County District Attorney. I'm a career prosecutor. I'm not a politician. I spent 26 years working as a prosecutor, fighting for justice for victims in the criminal justice system and making sure that everybody who enters the system is treated fairly. I spent almost 20 years of my career right here in Plymouth County prosecuting cases. And for the past 13 years, I have focused almost exclusively on investigating and trying murder cases. In fact, one of the proudest moments of my career came when I prosecuted a fellow named Eric Anderson in 2003 in a cold case for a grisly murder that was committed right here in Plymouth in 1977, not far from here in the Miles Standish State Forest. He killed a young woman named Ruth Masters when she was riding her bicycle through the state forest, and to convict him was one of the proudest moments of my career. I'm running because I want to restore strong leadership and an ethical compass to an office that I believe lacks these indispensable qualities. I believe in things like bail reform. We have a cash bail system in this Commonwealth that is unfair, that's discriminatory, that costs us a lot of money and isn't keeping us safer. I believe in targeting illegally possessed firearms, making it a focus and taking them off the streets of our communities so we can keep ourselves safer. I believe in a smarter approach to the opioid crisis. We can't be locking up addicts who commit low-level offenses. It doesn't work, and we need to rely more on the medical community and scientific research. And lastly, I believe in transparency. We live in a day and age where we need more transparency out of law enforcement, not less. Thank you. My name is John Bradley, and I'm asking for your vote on November 6th.
Thank you, John. Our next speaker tonight will be Gia Lane. Gia is here representing Katie McBride, who's the Democratic candidate for Mass Senate for the Plymouth and Norfolk counties. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Gia Lane, and I'm a volunteer for Katie McBride's campaign. I live in Marshfield, and I'll just tell you a little about my personal experience. I first met Katie at an event, a get-together, and she spoke, and I was very impressed with her poise and her thoughtful remarks and her commitment. To me, it spoke volumes that she will take a leave of absence from her job as a physician to enter public service. So her job and her experience was one of the key drivers that really galvanized her to run for office. She's a pediatrician. She practices in Scituate, and she lives in Hingham. And I know that she is very concerned about providing affordable and accessible health care for people, and is also very concerned about opioid addiction and treating it. So those are just two of the issues. Other issues are, I feel that Katie will take a science-based approach to protecting our environment, and also common sense is looking for common sense regulations for gun control. So just in closing, the district is Plymouth and Norfolk, which is Weymouth, Hingham, Hull, Cohasset, Norwell, Situate, Marshfield, and Duxbury. Thank you.
Next, we will be hearing from Vaughn Keller, representative on behalf of Deborah Rudolph, Democratic candidate for Mass Senate, Plymouth and Barnstable. Thank you.
Good evening. I got a call this afternoon from Deb, who ordinarily would have been here. Her grandson was diagnosed with cancer as a 7-year-old a few months ago, and they pushed up the time that he had to start chemo today, so that's where Deb is, at the Providence Hospital for Children. If you really want to know about Deb, and I hope you do before you vote, is go to our website, debrudolph.com. There's a lot of information there, as well as a very lovely video that tells you about Deb's background. She's a lawyer. Primarily, she has been representing elderly people and young people throughout her legal career. She's an activist, and she's one of the brightest people I know. I've known her for a while. Every election is about values, and it's about commitment, and it's about competence. And one of the things that's happened, I think, and we're all aware of it, is we need people who are legislating for us, who are able to use science to make decisions, use facts to make decisions, and who are also able to realize and keep in mind that every single policy decision that's made at a state legislature affects people's lives. It's real stuff. All politics comes down to very personal things where people are hurt or they're helped, but it's not some ethereal concept. And we really have to pay attention to that moving forward. So I would ask you, not simply about Deb, but about all the candidates, to keep those things in mind. Deb is very aware of the problems we have here in terms of what's going to happen with the environment, in terms of our shoreline and other things of that matter. So take a look at her website, okay? Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Our next candidate is Matthew Muratori, who is the Republican incumbent for the state rep for the 1st Plymouth District. Thank you, Matt.
It's great to be here. First of all, I want to thank the Chamber, which I'm a proud member of the Chamber, but thank you for what you're doing tonight and what you do for the community. Also want to thank PAC TV, too, for being here as well. Nobody has thanked PAC TV yet, but as a board of director of PAC TV, I have to acknowledge them as well, so thank you for being here. So I'm Matt Muratori, as she said. I am the incumbent here for the 1st Plymouth District. This is finishing my 2nd term. I live in South Plymouth. I'm a proud father of 6 beautiful daughters. Let that sink in for a second. Which is why I'm here. My beautiful wife, Kristen, is a local elder law and estate planning attorney here in town. I have a background as a nursing home administrator. I've been licensed as a nursing home administrator since 1991, so I have a great background in healthcare. I also own a daycare center called Crayon College, and I have a small healthcare consulting company as well, so I'm a small business owner. So I know the struggles that small businesses have in this day and age with all the regulations that have been coming upon us as small businesses, and I want to continue to fight up in Beacon Hill to help small businesses with some of these issues that we're having with EMAC taxes and some other things that are going on. But I really want to go back to, because as one of the two, I'm on 2 committees at the state level. One is healthcare financing and one is tourism. And one of the things I like to talk about is, in 30 seconds, is tourism equals economic equals economic opportunities here. Tourism is our economic engine here in Plymouth, and we've done a really good job with that. And one of the things we started doing is looking at 2020 is going to be all set. It's going to be a great commemoration between 2019 and 2021. We're going to get millions and millions of people here. We want to get people to come the years after, so we're looking at 20 and 20 beyond as well. So I respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th to put me back in to state rep in the 1st Plymouth District. Thank you.
I think we have 2 speakers left, right? So right now we will be hearing from Donna Doherty, who will be speaking on behalf of question 1, and position is no on that.
Thank you. My name is Donna Doherty. I am a nurse for 34 years, and I have the privilege of holding the position of Chief Nursing Officer at Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth. I am advocating for an opposition on question 1, which is a question which would mandate the number of nurses, number of patients any one nurse can care for in all units, in all hospitals across the state, at all times. And the impact of that, when we look at our institution and the community that we serve, would be, we believe, devastating. Access to health care would be limited. We look at being able to provide on a daily basis care to multiple communities, multiple patients who seek our services, and we do that in a way in which nurses move through the organization and have flexibility in making decisions based on the individual needs of a patient, not on a number. And so by limiting access, we see that that will detrimentally impact not only the EMS providers in the community, but also any of the community programs. So when we look at presently our status, we have about 30 nursing vacancies. We anticipate that we would need another 100 positions, so 130 nurses in just this community alone. And when we look at the competition and the supply and demand, we see that we're going to be taking nurses from other community programs, services, our schools, putting the community at great detriment to being able to provide all of the services that many of the candidates have spoken to, particularly in behavioral health. We have made a commitment in our organization to spend our dollars wisely in making sure that we can meet the needs of the crisis in this community. And if passed, this unfunded mandate would add millions of dollars to the tune of about $8 million to our facility alone, which would mean we would really have to look at programs and services that we would need to change in order to fund that. So I've talked about access, I've talked about recruitment, and the last thing that I want to say is that this takes away any nurse's ability to autonomously make a decision for the care of her patients, and to that I'm opposed, and I urge your opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final candidate speaking tonight is Quentin Palfrey. Quentin is the Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and welcome.
Good evening. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Quentin Palfrey. I'm the Democratic nominee for Lieutenant Governor. I'm very proud to be on the ticket with Jay Gonzalez, who has a bold vision for really investing in transportation and education, taking on the big challenges that we face, like the opioid crisis and climate change. I had the honor to be the chief of the healthcare division in the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, and then to serve as senior advisor for jobs and competitiveness in the White House under President Barack Obama. When I worked for President Obama, we worked hard to try to build an economy that works for everyone. And in 2016, like many of you, I worked really hard to try to elect a president who would carry on that legacy and those values. And I have to admit, I've been devastated by what's come since. There's a cruelty to this administration that rips apart families and puts walls between us and our neighbors, tries to knock tens of millions of people off of health insurance. There's also an attack on the fundamental underpinnings of our democracy. They attack truth and science, the labor movement, and the Constitution. To fight back, we absolutely need to take back the Congress, but for the leadership that we need on the issues that affect ordinary people, we also have to look to the states. There are real differences in the vision between Jay Gonzalez and Governor Baker. Jay Gonzalez has a plan for really investing in fixing our broken transportation system. It's just too hard for folks to get to work and to school, and it's really hurting our economy. We also have a plan for really investing in our public schools and making sure that where you live and the color of your skin doesn't determine whether they're laying off teachers and cutting back programs in your schools. And we're going to aim high to solve this opioid crisis. I've been to more than 200 communities in the course of this campaign, and everywhere I go, there aren't enough beds, there aren't enough services. We need real leadership in the governor's office to take on the big challenges that you face. So I'd love to have your support on November 6th, and thank you for considering me.
Thank you. On behalf of the Chamber's Economic Development and Government Relations Committees, we thank all the candidates for coming tonight, as well as all the residents for coming out. I saw something on Facebook this week, so if it was on Facebook, it must be true, right? Said the number of people going out and buying Megabucks tickets this week was just off the top. Every single one of those people thought there's a slight chance it could make a difference, but I'm going to go out and do it anyways. And if that same thought could bring people out to vote and to support candidates, what a difference that would make. It wouldn't be just one guy in South Carolina. So please spread that word.